the magic of vinegar. So we're talking about a couple, biohacks here. We're talking. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Obesity Project, episode 14. Today, we're talking about are carbs friend or foe, and the truth about fiber, insulin, and obesity. Welcome. My name is Dr. Mark Shankman. I'm an oral and maxillofacial surgeon. As I've mentioned several times, that this has been both a personal journey and an educational journey for myself, for my patients, for people in general. So let's dive right in. So first off, are carbs really the enemy? Or is it simply a matter of what we've done to them? You know, we've processed carbs, we've ultra processed them, we've made them super crazy delicious. We've made them almost pathologically delicious. So, and I've heard someone else use that term, so I'm using it. It's a great term. But also when it comes to low carbohydrate diets, keto and carnivore, so many diets have demonized carbohydrates. But are carbs themselves good or are they bad? And the real issue is not whether they're good or bad, it's how we refine them, how we strip them of their fiber, how we overload our body with insulin spiking foods. And that's really the ultimate problem, is what we've done to the carbs and how we've taken away all the good aspects of carbs and only left behind the stuff that's really damaging. So what I want to start off by doing is talking about the glycemic index and glycemic load, talking about the flawed system. So the glycemic index is a term that scientists use to measure how quickly a food raises blood sugar. But there's a problem with this sort of theory. It only looks at glucose. It does not measure insulin. And glucose doesn't drive obesity, insulin does. So lots of foods impact the glycemic index differently. So berries actually have a much lower glycemic index than, say, a sugary cereal, which has a really super high index. So what the index really talks about is how quickly the blood sugar is raised, how quick or how narrow that spike is as the blood sugar rises and then falls again as insulin is released. So it's a good indicator of how quickly your body reacts to the blood sugar and how quickly that blood sugar goes from the stomach into the blood supply, into the bloodstream. But it's not really a great measure for obesity because obesity is driven by insulin. So what's a much better measure is this concept of glycemic load, because what it really accounts for is portion size and real world effects. So the glycemic load talks about how quickly the blood sugar rises, but it's also a matter of how the portion size regulates it and things like fiber. So, but even the glycemic load is not perfect because fiber does change everything. So in a study in 2011 in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, they showed that fiber slows digestion, reducing the insulin spike from carbs. And refined carbs equals insulin response. So if we can reduce the insulin spike, we can, create a positive effect on people's health. So whole fiber-rich carbs equals a lower insulin response, which is a much, much better thing. And that's why the glycemic load is actually a better determining factor than the glycemic index, because it factors in fiber and it factors in how that fiber slows down the digestion of those carbohydrates, which again, is a reminder for everybody, carbohydrates are nothing more than strings of sugar. So whether you're talking about bread or pasta or cereal or oatmeal or natural fruits, these are all strings of sugar put together into carbohydrates or starches. So let's talk about the problem with the modern wheat, because the modern wheat has actually been the West's grain of choice for centuries. But today's wheat is very different from the wheat that we used to have in ancient times. So first of all, in ancient times, the wheat used to be much, much taller, and a much greater percentage of the wheat was actually the stalk that was pretty well useless. And through genetic modification, we've adjusted the wheat to become this sort of dwarf wheat that is the predominant wheat of our modern society. It's certainly higher in carbohydrate. It has a much shorter stalk, and it has much greater surface that is where the wheat is harvested from. So the other thing that we've done, as of course we just mentioned previously, is we've over-processed this. So we stripped the modern wheat of all of its fiber, leaving just the starchy endosperm, which is the part that we actually use and turn into flour and other products. We've also made it completely hyper palatable, meaning super pathologically delicious. We've designed it for taste, not for health, and that's really important. Plus, the modern wheat has been modified in such a way that now it's much higher in gluten than the ancient wheat used to be, and in a chemical called amylopectin A. Both of these are types of starches that will spike insulin even more than sugar. So, in a study in 2012 in the Journal of Nutrition and Metabolism, they found that modern wheat actually raises blood sugar higher and faster than actual table sugar. So, we've converted the wheat, we've processed the wheat, and we've made it so much higher in gluten and amylopectin that it actually now spikes the blood sugar faster than table sugar does. So in another study in 2015 in the Diabetes Care Journal, they compared whole wheat versus refined wheat in people with type 2 diabetes. And they found that whole wheat does lead to lower insulin spikes, but still higher than other whole grains like barley or quinoa. So although the whole wheat does help to some degree because you're not stripping out many of the nutrients and the other products that slow the absorption of the wheat, it still is a very, very high spike compared to many other whole grains. So let's talk a little bit about fiber. Fiber is this like big mysterious sort of anti-nutrient. It's not something that is absolutely or never been proven, let's say, to actually be an essential nutrient. Fiber is often hailed as the magic ingredient for weight loss or blood sugar control, but there's much, much more to this story. And so let's talk a little bit about the benefits of fiber. So what does fiber do? Fiber actually slows the digestion, decreasing the insulin spike or slowing that insulin spike down. It also feeds gut bacteria, and everybody talks about the effects of the microbiome or the gut bacteria on and the need for fiber to support metabolic health and support gut microbiome. But the truth of the matter is, without fiber, we know that the gut microbiome does change, but change doesn't necessarily mean bad. Change just means that you may have less bacteria that actually digest that fiber, but the fiber and those gut bacteria that do convert the fiber also create a lot of gas, methane gas, which then, of course, creates flatulence and some other GI distress. The other thing that fiber does is it increases satiety. So this one's really beneficial, and it does help with weight control because when you eat that fiber and you eat that, the wheat or you eat any carbohydrate that has fiber in it, that fiber swells in the stomach, stretches the stomach out, and that releases satiety hormones, which then give you that feeling of fullness. So it does help to some degree with weight control, but is it really all that it's cracked up to be? So let's talk about fiber as an anti-nutrient. So some fibers can actually block nutrient absorption. So not all fibers are created equal, and some of them can have some negative or deleterious effects. In excess, as I mentioned, they can cause bloating, they can cause gut irritation, and even some mineral deficiencies. So as an example, whole grains do contain a chemical called phytic acid, which binds to minerals like iron, calcium, and magnesium, and actually reduce their absorption. So whereas, folks that, and I'm going to be completely transparent, I'm about to start a carnivore diet. On the carnivore diet, there's, of course, reduction or almost elimination. Actually, there is elimination of many fiber. And so, lots of people that are sort of against the carnivore diet say, well, fiber is an essential nutrient. And if you don't get it, you're going to actually be deficient in certain vitamins and minerals. Well, here we've actually shown that whole grains containing phytic acid will block the absorption of things like iron, calcium, and magnesium. So, not entirely true. And it's never been proven that fiber is essential for human survival. There may be some benefits, but there also may not be some benefits. And it's very, very unclear in the literature as to whether fiber is essential. In my belief, and this is just my belief now, fiber is essential if you eat a high carbohydrate, or I'm sorry, a whole carbohydrate food diet. So meaning fruits and vegetables in their whole food form. Then I do believe that fiber is necessary, which comes in those products. And then having the right gut microbiome to process that fiber and aid in nutrition is essential. However, in my opinion, on very low carbohydrate diets that do not include whole fruits and grains, and I'm sorry, not grains, whole fruits and vegetables, then I don't believe that that fiber is actually a necessary thing. Your gut microbiome will adjust, and I do not believe that fiber is incredibly necessary. So here's an example of this in a study in 2016 in the Gut Microbiome Research magazine or publication. They found that fiber diversity, not just the quantity, but the diversity of that fiber was the key for gut and metabolic health. In a study in 2020 out of Cell Metabolism, they showed that fiber from whole foods, not supplements, was actually best at reducing insulin resistance. So, there's some evidence that fiber can be helpful, but we need to do some serious investigation into diets that eliminate whole fruits and vegetables, and then see the effect of that fiber on those types of diets. A lot of times when people talk about things like vitamin and mineral deficiencies or microbiome, they're talking about it in the presence of a high carbohydrate diet, which is what most Western diets are. In the presence of a low carbohydrate diet, a lot of things change, like the need for vitamin C dramatically goes down. A lot of other essential nutrients and vitamins and minerals become less important, or not less important, but less of it needed to be able to provide what's needed to be provided to a healthy diet. So let's talk a little bit about fiber and type 2 diabetes and its protective role. So again, fiber is not bad. I'm not saying fiber is bad. I'm just saying it's not necessarily essential. But how does fiber help prevent diabetes? Well, it lowers post-meal insulin response. As I said, it slows the insulin spike, which then slows glucose absorption. And it also can feed gut bacteria that improve insulin sensitivity. So there is definitely some evidence that fiber is a helpful and beneficial thing in your diet. In a study in 2021 in the Diabetes Journal, they showed that a high fiber diet significantly reduced type 2 diabetes risk. But this is also a high fiber diet that is low in refined and processed carbohydrate, which I would say is probably the main benefit, but certainly benefit in high fiber diets. If you're eating those carbs, you're eating those carbs with that high fiber in them. But only when the fiber came from the whole foods in that study, not when they were processed fiber additives. So your Metamucils and your other additives as a after fact. Okay, let's talk about another sort of magic elixir in terms of slowing glucose absorption and lowering insulin levels, and that's the magic of vinegar. So we're talking about a couple, biohacks here. We're talking about utilizing fiber to slow the glucose absorption. And now we're going to talk about the magic of vinegar and how it also lowers insulin. So did you know that vinegar can blunt the insulin spike from carbs? And you can see as much as a 30 or 40% decrease in the amount of both glucose and insulin spiking after eating carbohydrates. So acetic acid in vinegar slows stomach emptying and reduces glucose absorption. So just 1 tablespoon before a meal can lower post-meal insulin levels. So this can be in, a simple tablespoon that you drink down before a meal. It can be placed in water and stirred up and drank that way. I tried that. I think it's pretty awful. I'd rather just do the shot of vinegar. Or you could take a vinegar capsule that has it contained, and once it's digested, it's released into the stomach. That will work too. My favorite is to just eat a pickle or eat some marinated vegetables that are marinated in vinegar. This way you're getting that vinegar in a more palatable way. Well, in a study in 2004, in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition, they found that vinegar reduced post-meal blood sugar by 34% in insulin-resistant individuals, not even in people who are sensitive to insulin, but in insulin-resistant individuals. And then in another study in 2010 in the Annals of Nutrition and Metabolism, they showed that vinegar reduced insulin response and increased satiety in overweight individuals in obesity. So as I mentioned, there are several different ways you can use vinegar. I mentioned a couple of them, but you can also do an apple cider vinegar was very popular for a little while. I still think it's a useful thing, but it doesn't have to be apple cider vinegar. It could be regular acetic acid, regular vinegar. But you could do 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar in water before meals. You can use it in salad dressings or over veggies, sort of as I mentioned. But you do want to avoid any kind of sweetened vinegar like balsamic glazes, because now there's added sugar, which will decrease some of the benefit that you're getting in that vinegar. All right, so let's talk about some of the takeaways to whether, let me go this way, whether carbs are actually good or bad. So one, carbs are not the enemy. Refined carbohydrates are. Highly refined processed carbs are the enemy. They've been created in a lab to become hyper palatable, to become pathologically delicious. And that's what you really want to stay away from. There is no problem if you want, like I mentioned, carnivore, but you don't have to go carnivore. You don't have to go keto. You can do a low carbohydrate diet where the only carbs you're taking in are whole fruits and vegetables, perfectly healthy, and will decrease glucose, your blood glucose will decrease the insulin spike, and will keep you much healthier, keep you insulin sensitive, and reduce your risk of diabetes. As I also mentioned, fiber is protective, but processed fiber isn't the same as real food fiber. So get that that fiber in your food naturally. Also, we talked about how modern wheat spikes insulin more than even table sugar does. We talked about vinegar, and it's an underrated tool for reducing insulin spikes. And so what I want to know from you guys, and what I'd love for you to drop in the comment below, is have you ever noticed a difference in how your carbs, or those carbs that you eat, affect your body? How do you feel after you eat carbs? I know when I eat high carb diet, I feel lethargic, I feel bloated, I actually feel pretty terrible. So that's your body telling you what's going on. That's your body telling you this wasn't the best meal, this wasn't the best food for you to ingest. And so how do you feel when you eat carbs? So please like, share, and comment as always, but certainly share this with someone who thinks that all carbs are bad. I'm not here to tell you that all carbs are bad. I'm here to tell you if you want to take those carbs in, that's certainly okay, but make sure they come in this sort of arrangement in whole vegetables, whole fruits, berries, things with low glycemic index, with low glycemic load, and are much more healthy and beneficial, and also reduce obesity like you see here. All right. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you. I appreciate you giving me the time. Again, share this with people that you think would benefit from this information, and I will catch you in the next video. Take care.